Vineeta Singh. She is a trailblazer, a superstar. If you haven't heard of Vineeta already, then you probably aren't watching enough TV. Yes, Vineeta Singh was one of the judges and one of the investors or the sharks on Shark Tank India's first season. Not just that, she is the CEO of Sugar Cosmetics, which is a fast growing cosmetics company from India. And she's overall really stylish and has a lot of influence right now with young millennial audiences. But there is one thing that drives her success that probably is not so apparent, and that's something that I'm going to try and deconstruct in this video. So watch the entire video so that you can learn some lessons as to how you can apply some of the things that Vineeta does into your own life, business and career, and reap, if not as much success as Vineeta, at least some amount of it. Welcome back. The first time that I bumped into Vineeta Singh was at a digital conference. Now, this was back in 2020. The lockdown had just been announced. I think after a couple of months, it was amply clear that we were going to live in the digital world for a while. And I had just started my company, The Story Co. I was looking to network with startup founders, marketeers, communication professionals. So I came across an interesting conference called Freshworks for Startups, which is hosted by Freshworks, which is a very successful SaaS company. And one of the speakers or one of the sessions was titled Fear as Fuel, how to use fear as fuel while building your startup. Now, the title of the session itself was super interesting, and I listened to a lot of talks through the day. All the talks were great, they were interesting, very insightful. But this particular talk was delivered by Vineeta Singh, and it really stood out for me because the way Vineeta narrated the entire story was very different from the approach that everybody else had taken. Everyone was interested in sharing information and insights directly, whereas Vineeta actually talked about how you can build your startup step by step. But she wrapped it around an interesting story of her own struggle or journey with Ironman. Ironman, if I understand it correct, if I can define it correctly, is when you have to run a marathon, you also have to cycle, and you have to do, I think, a 3 or 4 kilometer swim. I remember in that presentation, Vineeta narrated the story of how she was swimming for the first time in an open water lake, that too in Austria. And when she was swimming, she could not see the bed of the lake or the floor of the lake. And for someone who had always swum in swimming pools in Mumbai or elsewhere, it really freaked her out. And she said that I would actually think of giving up all the time, and then the lifeguards would come and I would tell them that, okay, 15 more minutes, if I'm not able to do it, I will actually get onto the boat. And so on and so forth. She eventually completed the Ironman attempt successfully, and she then came back to Mumbai and then started going back into the open waters or to the sea in Mumbai, just to get rid of this fear that she had of open waters and of not being able to see the lake bed or the ocean bed. Now, this metaphor, she used it really nicely to showcase how you can also use the fear that you feel as a startup founder, whether it's about growth, whether it's about certain metrics, about building a large-scale organization, about funding, etc., how you can use the fear to actually motivate yourself to learn new things, to do things in a better way. I think she also, made that very popular connection between fear and excitement, that what you feel when you feel scared and when you feel excited are one and the same. It's up to you how you want to use that feeling. So I found her presentation to be the most interesting that day. In fact, I also wrote a blog about Vineeta Singh as a result of that particular presentation. So that's the first thing I wanted to let you know, and that gives you some cues about what is it that I want to tell you about Vineeta Singh, or what is probably the key to her success. Her storytelling abilities. Not a lot of Indian startup founders can narrate their story the way Vineeta Singh does, And if you ask me, I think a lot of her success and the opportunities that she's got in life and in her career is because of her exceptional storytelling skills. And I'm going to break that down further for you in the next segment of the video, and then going to tell you how you can apply this in your life and career as well. Like I said, I'll further break down why I think Vineeta Singh is a great storyteller and why her ability to tell great stories brings her a lot of opportunities. So now let's get down to it. Number one, she shares memorable stories. Now, if you are somebody who's followed Vineeta Singh's career or have actually taken any mild interest in what Vineeta Singh stands for, there are a few things that you will remember. The first thing that I remember is that she let go of a 1 crore job offer when she passed out of IIM Bangalore, if I'm not mistaken. And that is something that she's spoken about, and it's been reported by a lot of media outlets. In fact, it's one of the things that you remember about her. Okay. The other thing is that she's really into running, which is like she participates in marathons across the world. She's gone on record many times saying that how it's important for her to get her daily run because that helps her maintain a balance between her work life and her personal life, and also helps her mental health. That's the second thing that you will remember about her. And she also speaks about her father, about his journey, etc., etc. But the other interesting thing is that Vineeta doesn't shy away from repeating her stories over and over again. I know a lot of good communicators, entrepreneurs, marketers who believe that you need to have a new story every time that you're speaking to an audience. Vineeta doesn't fall into that trap. She's good with having a few good stories, improving them time and time again, and she keeps on narrating them. So that's one of the things which I think makes her special. Number two, she embraces adversity and she turns it into an opportunity. Now, why do I say that? Even if you look at Vineeta's business along with her husband Kaushik, which is Sugar Cosmetics, it operates in a space which has huge amount of competition. A lot of startup founders would be discouraged by the fact that they are going to enter the territory which belongs to a lot of big multinational companies. But Vineeta has followed her track because she says always that it's the customer or it's the user which made her realize that there was an opportunity in that particular space, and she followed it. And she's turned that into an opportunity literally, because Sugar Cosmetics is one of the fastest growing companies right now, and it is really challenging the incumbents in their own domain. She's a female founder, right? And things are never really easy for female founders in India or anywhere across the world for that matter. They definitely face more challenges than male founders do. And Vineeta really talks about that, but not in the way that it is some sort of limitation that she cannot come across. She always speaks about it in a positive light, that yes, I embrace the fact that I'm a female founder. It also gives me an opportunity to build a company which I want to build for women, etc., etc. Not just that, she's also faced challenges because Kaushik and Vineeta are a couple, they're husband and wife, and there is some amount of, I wouldn't say stigma, but there are maybe certain steps which become difficult for couple founders as well, because investors have more questions for couples, if I'm not mistaken. She's also embraced that, and she never shies away from narrating that story as well. So she's never hiding. She's always authentic, and she shares all of these stories, or think of these things as adversity. The third thing that I wanted to talk about in this particular vein, or in this particular skill set that Vineeta has, which is about turning adversity into opportunity. Now, if you look at Vineeta and you look at her interviews, of course, she's, I guess, like a lot of people who went to English schools, went to great universities, etc. You become very anglicized in your communication or in your public speaking. And Vineeta identifies the fact that for her to reach a huge or a bigger amount of audience, it's important for her to embrace Hindi, or at least give it a try. So you must have seen her speaking on Shark Tank. There's also a Josh talk that she delivered. There are many other different avenues where she's had to speak in Hindi, and you can clearly see that she is not the most comfortable in Hindi when it comes to public speaking. And it's true of many of us. We probably speak Hindi really well when it comes to friends, because we are being colloquial. But when we want to speak Hindi at a formal occasion, it becomes slightly difficult for us. Because of that, I know a lot of business people who shy away from such opportunities. But Vineeta has actually embraced that adversity as well, despite the fact that sometimes she doesn't use the right Hindi. Sometimes, she peppers her Hindi with a lot of English words, but she's not shied away from it. And I think that is a mark of somebody who's really confident, somebody who's not doesn't get scared with failure, or somebody who's not scared of judgment. And I think this ability to take adversity and turn it into an opportunity is an important skill set or quality that Vineeta Singh possesses. Now I'm going to share the last thing. I mean, there are many great things about Vineeta, but last thing which is relevant for this particular video before I tell you how you can use these things in your life and career too. Final point I want to make in this video about Vineeta Singh and her great storytelling abilities is that she uses every platform, she uses every opportunity. Now, after she delivered the session at Freshworks for startups in 2020, I reached out to her personally, and at that point in time, I had just started the StoryCo. I was, if anything, just a rookie communications coach, but she was gracious enough to give me time and to speak with me as well and share her thoughts on storytelling and on communication, etc., which indicated to something really important. And when I actually look at Vineeta Singh's social channels and her interviews, etc., I realize that more often than not, she's okay to go ahead and speak at every given opportunity, through her Instagram channel, through her Twitter account, through blogs, through interviews, through podcasts. She really understands the power of putting your word out. And this is one of the things that a lot of business leaders maybe don't understand, or maybe they sort of misunderstand this, is that you don't really need to, especially in this digital world, think of which is the best possible placement for your story. Like a lot of business leaders would think that you need to be in Economic Times or the Times of India, and nothing less than that will do. But the point is that if you have a good story, your good story, even if it comes in, let's say, a podcast which is listened to by maybe 1,000 people, out of those 1,000 people, somebody will approach you, and that story will grow bigger and bigger, and eventually it will reach Economic Times or the Times of India, any which way. So I think Vineeta by design understands this, and that is why she uses every platform, every opportunity to narrate her story. And this is something that a lot more of us can do. So if you have the ability to write blogs, please go ahead and write blogs as a professional, as an entrepreneur, as a marketer, as a content creator. If you are somebody who's comfortable on video, please go ahead and write your own, create your videos for LinkedIn, for YouTube, for Instagram, etc. So whatever format, medium you're comfortable with, please go ahead and create your own content, keep narrating your own story or stories. So this is something important that we can learn from Vineeta, of course, apart from the other two things that I said, that you need to come up with a few memorable stories. Now, these memorable stories are probably already there in your life. It could be a hobby that you are pursuing, which is away from your work. It could be an interesting situation or transformation that you've seen in your life. For instance, how Vineeta let go of a 1 crore job opportunity. I generally narrate the fact that I quit my PR career at the age of 32 to travel the world and write stories. So that's something that gets a lot of people interested in my work and in my journey. So similarly, if you identify a few key hooks of your stories and keep narrating them over and over again, you will get a lot of interest from your audience. And the third thing, like I said, Vineeta turns adversity and turn it into opportunity. Sometimes it's about the space that we are operating in, some of the disadvantages that we have in our lives, etc. Those are all fabulous stories that we can narrate, and other people can get inspired or can learn from those things. And that becomes your asset as you go along in this journey. So that's that from me. Vineeta Singh is a fabulous, incredible entrepreneur or a public figure to follow. I hope to learn more from her in the coming days. and I definitely feel she's one of the better business storytellers in India, and a lot of other entrepreneurs and marketeers and communication professionals can learn from her. That's it from me in this video. If you want to know anything about business storytelling, please feel free to let us know in comments or ask us the question in comments. Either I or one of my colleagues will get back to you shortly. That's it from me in this video. I'll see you in the next one pretty soon. Bye-bye.